Darkness had fallen upon the woods, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across Sarah's living room floor. Her small cottage stood alone, a solitary figure at the edge of the vast, silent woods. The old house creaked and groaned around her, a familiar symphony of settling wood and whistling wind that usually brought her comfort. But tonight something felt different. An unsettling stillness hung in the air, pressing against her like an unseen hand. Sarah sat curled up on her worn sofa, a book clasped in her hand, her eyes struggling to focus on the words. She found herself listening intently to the sounds of the night, her nerves on edge. The wind howled outside, whipping through the trees with a vengeance, and rain lashed against the window panes. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside her window sent a shiver down her spine. She tried to shake off the growing unease, telling herself it was just the storm playing tricks on her mind. She had lived in this house for years, finding solace in its isolation, and she had never felt truly afraid. But tonight something felt different, something sinister lurked in the shadows, watching, waiting. A sharp tapping sound like fingernails drumming against glass cut through the silence. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, and her head snapped up, her eyes darting towards the source of the sound. The tapping seemed to be coming from her bedroom window, a rhythmic, insistent beat that sent chills down her spine. Her heart pounded in her chest as she strained to listen, her senses on high alert. She told herself it was just a tree branch swaying wildly in the wind and knocking against the glass. It had happened before during particularly violent storms, but deep down, a knot of fear twisted in her stomach. The tapping was too regular, too insistent to be just a random branch. She slowly lowered her book, her gaze fixed on the bedroom door, her mind racing. Each tap was like a hammer blow against her sanity, chipping away at her composure. She listened intently, her breath shallow and quick, but the wind seemed to have died down and the tapping continued. Unable to bear the suspense any longer, Sarah slowly rose from the sofa, her bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. She crept towards the bedroom, each step hesitant, filled with a growing sense of dread. The tapping grew louder as she approached the door, and she could have sworn she heard a faint scratching sound now, like claws raking against the glass. Taking a deep breath, she reached for the doorknob, her hand trembling slightly. She threw open the door and flicked on the light, her eyes immediately drawn to the window. The curtains billowed inward as if an unseen presence had just rushed out into the night. Rain lashed against the glass, but there was no sign of any branches hitting the window. A cold draft seemed to seep into the room, raising goosebumps on her arms. She shivered, wrapping her arms around herself as if to ward off an unseen chill. And that's when she felt it, a cold, fetid breath against her neck, sending a wave of terror crashing over her. She spun around, her heart pounding so loudly she could hear it in her ears, expecting to come face to face with whatever lurked in her room. But the room was empty. The shadows danced in the corners, but there was nothing there. She was alone, or so she thought. As she turned back towards the window, her gaze fell upon the antique mirror that hung on the wall opposite her bed. In the reflection, she saw it, a figure standing just behind her, shrouded in darkness. Its eyes, two glowing embers, bored into her, and a twisted grin stretched across its pale, gaunt face. A whisper, cold and raspy, seemed to slither from its lips, brushing against her ear, sending chills down her spine. "I know you're not alone," it hissed, the sound echoing in the silence of her room. Sarah's blood ran cold. She froze, her breath catching in her throat, too terrified to even scream.